Everybody, cups up. Good morning to the Morning Word crowd. September the 13th, 2021. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Before I get started, I just want to promote a movie. It's out. It's a new Kendrick Brothers movie that is out at the movie theater. It's going to be there until the 16th. It's going to be here in Tuscaloosa until the 16th of September. It's called Show Us the Father. Absolutely astounding movie. We ended up yesterday with about 25 people from our church just kind of haphazardly making it to the movie at the same time. And it was a fabulous time and just a great story. I want to encourage you. And if you miss it, try to find it somewhere where you can live stream it, rent it or something, purchase it. It's really worth your time. It's a great story. Great little catch to it too. So if you're at 3 John, we're going to be talking to you this morning. As you notice, our morning word is who is Gaius, or Gaius who, question mark. We're going to talk about him, but before we do, we want to give a shout out to all of our school teachers, to our first responders, to our police and military personnel. Thank you for what you do. God bless you. God bless America. God bless India. And God bless the other nations that watch us, that get around to it. 3 John, this is the guy that wrote the Gospel of John, John the Beloved, also wrote an epistle here and the book of the Revelation, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John. We're in 3 John. It's just a little short personal letter. It's a personal letter that John wrote to a guy named Gaius. Now you go, who is Gaius? Well, that's the morning word. Who is Gaius? We're going to find out who he is. He's so important. What he did was so important that God saw to it that his letter, just this short little letter, probably go on a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, made it into the preserved canon of Scripture that God preserved, because what Gaius did in his life, God obviously thought was important enough to preserve forever, and especially for us in these days as we read it. So I just want to read the letter. It's really short, so bear with me. Here we go. The elder, that's John referring to himself. To the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers. For I rejoiced greatly when brethren came and testified of the truth that is in you, just as you walk in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. Beloved, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers who have borne witness of your love before the church. If you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you will do well, because they went forth for his name's sake, taking nothing from the Gentiles. We therefore ought to receive such that we may become fellow workers for the truth. I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to have the preeminence among them, does not receive us. Therefore, if I come, I will call to mind his deeds which he does, prating against us with malicious words, and not content with that, he himself does not receive the brethren, and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the church. Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God. Demetrius has a good testimony from all, and from the truth itself, and we also bear witness, and you know that our testimony is true. I had many things to write, but I do not wish to write to you with a pen and ink. But I hope to see you shortly, and we shall speak face to face. Peace to you. Our friends greet you. Greet the friends by name. Now, there's a lot here. I'm not going to talk about John's prayer for Gaius, that he may prosper and be in health. We'll get to that maybe tomorrow. But I do want to get to the part where he commends John commends him for his generosity. Now, before he gets there, he tells him that I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. John called the ones that he led to the Lord his children. So what we're learning here is Gaius is a man whom John, in his travels and teaching, preaching, led this man to the Lord. So he calls him he proposes to be this man, Gaius, his spiritual father, in the sense that he led him to the Lord, not that he has any kind of authority over him. And then he commends him. He says, the word has gone out. The church has borne witness that the things that you do for the brethren and for strangers. Now, what that was in the day, and you can remember this back in the Gospels where Jesus is sending out the disciples. He said, wherever you go, search for a worthy home. If they receive you, let your peace be upon it. If they reject you, when you leave, kick the dust off your feet. They didn't have, in those days, they didn't have the hotels, the motels, and so forth. When the disciples went forth to preach the gospel, they had to stay with someone. They had to be hosted. They were dependent upon someone else's hospitality for their meals, for their bed, for water, for whatever it was, while they were in another area preaching or teaching, or they're just on a ministry assignment. They were dependent upon other people. So what we're looking at here is this guy named Gaius, who's in 3 John. John's letter to him is preserved, is because John was commending him for his hospitality, and God wanted to preserve this letter so that we could see it. Now, he says that his hospitality was towards the brethren and strangers, and said that he was willing to host, help, feed, support monetarily, whatever, those who were coming through preaching the gospel. Now, in 2 John, John had warned the churches not to be hospitable towards and not to keep company with false teachers. But in 3 John, he's talking to them about keeping company with and hosting and being hospitable towards those who are preaching the gospel. Now, he's trying to help them to see that he goes on to say that and I'm going to read this verse again. He tells them in verse 6, if you send them, the second part of verse 6, he said, if you send them forward, talking about the missionaries, the evangelists, the preachers, if you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you will do well. All right, watch. Because they went forth for his name's sake. In other words, the people that you were helping, Gaius, they were serving the Lord. They were engaged in active ministry, all right? And taking nothing from the Gentiles. What that means was when they went to preach, they did not charge a fee. They did not have an honorarium. They didn't have their money guaranteed. They went, and they would not take money because, and you remember Paul's story regarding this. He said, I didn't take money from the Gentiles, neither from the Jews, because I didn't want anyone to say, A, I was preaching or teaching for the money, and B, I didn't want them to be able to hold that over the head of our ministry. So wherever he went, Paul raised his own money by working with his hands in a trade as a tent maker. And not only did he raise money for himself, he raised money for those that were traveling with him to cut off the accusation and the black eye that people wanted to put upon him, upon God, and upon the ministry for saying you guys are just in it for the money. So it says, because they went forth for his name's sake, they're preaching the gospel, taking nothing from the Gentiles, we therefore ought to receive such, meaning we ought the word receive means we ought to support. That's what that word receive is. He said that we ought to support such that we may become fellow workers for the truth. So here's what John was writing to Gaius, and this is what God is writing to us through John's letter to Gaius. And that is that when we take care of the preachers and the teachers and the evangelists and the missionaries, that we become partakers of their ministry, that we become partakers of spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ around the world. Now, you know right now, this month, we are raising money to send to Manoj Tandy for the orphanages and for the pastors in India, where the portion of India where he lives. Now, I've never met Manoj personally. I've actually talked to him on the phone 2 or 3 times. I kind of follow his Facebook page. I've prayed and I've talked and sought the Lord's wisdom, and I've also talked to Manoj, telling him, I said, Manoj, you know, when we send you monetary support, there is no way that once that money's gone that we can get it back. There's no way that we can determine where it goes. You could steal it. You could give it to some other people. You could live high on the hog over there for whatever reason. You can take advantage of us. You can. And I said, so I'm trusting you, and I'm praying, and I'm believing that you're going to be a good steward of the resources. And of course, Minaj is on here, and he'll tell you that he has pledged to do such, that we will be able to see and to witness and get a report from him about how the money is spent. But when we do that, we become partakers of the spreading of the gospel in India. And while Minaj is on the ground teaching teachers and helping children, and you and I are in the United States of America, or some semblance of it today, at least, but we are praying for and supporting him. God considers, that's what he's telling us here, God considers us to be in the evangelism business of sharing the gospel in India. So when people say, well, what the Lord's got you going on in your life, you say, well, I'm in ministry in India. And you can look, and you can honestly say that. And you say, I'm in ministry in India. And they say, what are you doing? What are you talking about? So I'm helping spread the gospel in India through an Indian pastor, born-again pastor named Manoj Tandi, and we support him. And we've become partakers. That's what it says, that we become partakers or fellow workers for the truth. Fellow workers. We're all on the same team. We're all on the same team. And so, see, there's another guy that I've met at Tabinka in Uganda, and he's on the same team as Minaj in India. And they're on the same team as Philip Cameron in Tennessee, who's helping orphans that we just talked to and met yesterday, visited with, and he shared with us in Moldova, who's on the same team as Nick Boyd in Mozambique, who's on the same team as Samaritan's Purse in Syria, who's on the same team. And you see how it goes? Who's on the same team, who's on the same team, who's on the same team. And God says when we extend hospitality, when we support, not only by bringing them into our homes, bringing them into our churches, putting them up at the Hilton. When we put people up when people come into our church and visit and share the gospel, and we put them up, i.e. we get them a hotel room wherever they want. If they don't tell us where they want, we get them a room at the Hampton, and we get them the best room that we can get them, and we spend money on them. We want to. And there's more that, even as I read this morning, there's more that we can do for these people with regards to showing them our hospitality, not just when they come to New Beginning to share, and not just when we send money to them on a monthly or yearly basis for their ministries, but there's other ways that we can show them hospitality that's more personal. And it's ironic, or maybe it's not ironic, that one of the things the Lord laid on my heart in the last couple of weeks, and we are pursuing that now, is forming a formal hospitality team in our church. People who feel led of the Lord, who have to be a part of our hospitality team, to show people hospitality. Visitors to our church, that's what he said over here. He said, not only do you show it to the brethren, you show it to strangers. Visitors to our church, pastors and their families that come to our church, evangelists and their families that come to our church, missionaries and their families that come to our church, just hospitality in general. There's a way that we can do that and do that better. See, you never get a second chance to make a first impression, particularly for your first-time visitors, or whether they be evangelists or whether they just be people coming to your church. But there's always a way that you can continually show hospitality. Over in the Old Testament, there was a widow who showed hospitality to Elisha. And he and this woman and her husband built a room. They call it a prophet's chamber. And they built a room onto their house that whenever Elisha or a prophet or someone came into their area, their region, their town, that they would invite them. Again, they didn't have hotels or motels or motorhomes or anything like that. And so they said, you come stay at our house. We have a prophet's quarters. It was a bed. I'm sure they had sheets and all that stuff in there, and a table and a lamp that you light, not a lamp that you cut on. They didn't have a big screen TV and remote control, but I'm sure they had a water basin, some oil they could wash their face and hands and hair with, a towel, a place that they could have some privacy, to pray, to study, to be alone, to get away, to have some quietness. And so there's people today that I know that have prophets' chambers, and they've actually built homes and cabins for for evangelists and people when they come into town. So there's a lot of ways that we can show hospitality. And again, it's displaying the truth. He goes over here and he says, beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God. So God said, this is a good thing. When you show hospitality, you're doing good. And the scripture tells us not to grow weary in doing good, for we shall reap a reward in due season. So that's one of the ways that we can serve the Lord, is being hospitable. Build a place, have a place, extend a place. Send a gift package, a care package, a Christmas package. Philip Cameron sends me probably a $60 or $70 box of original Walker butter cookies from Scotland every year. I mean, he's going to kill me. He's going to send me to the cardiologist, but those things are good. They are good. And he sends it to us. I should be sending it to him. But he sends it to his close supporters that are his friends, just to show that he loves us, and it's that he doesn't just show up to get money. He sends gifts to his supporters. And see, that we should be flipping the script on that. We should be sending gifts to them. We should be sending them care packages and Christmas packages or Thanksgiving packages. And you like to get stuff in the mail, and you like to get a thing that says you have a package at the post office that you can go pick up. And it's just something, and it doesn't have to be something much, but it's something that shows someone else that you're thinking about them. And that's what God wants us to do, is to be hospitable. So think about ways that you and I can extend hospitality. That's just support. That's just love and encouragement and support. We talked about Barnabas the other day. He was just a guy that just encouraged people. He made it his life's ambition to find those people who were, down and out, depressed, once vibrant in their faith, now fallen by the way. He went and found those guys, and he revved them up, pepped them up, patted them, and then went with them and encouraged them in their walk with the Lord. Well, here's a way that we can do that and never leave the house, really, in some instances. Phone calls, notes, text, emails, packages in the mail, checks, support. Find Minaj here on Facebook and just encourage him. You know what it means to be in India and have someone in the United States call you by name and say, I'm praying for you. Is there some way I can help you? And so I just want to try to do all that we can to nurture and support those who are in the field. See, God's never led me, to be involved in overseas ministry on a regular basis. I have a cousin, Dennis Avery, who's gone back and forth to Russia probably close to 100 times since the Soviet Union collapsed. Alex and Ruby Ray, Honest Sartain went to Mexico 100 times. I've never been called to do that, but what I have been called, and one of the things that I'm doing right now, is to use social media and the success that God has given to us in a morning word to try to make known ministries and ministers and evangelists and so forth that need our support, and be able to raise support for them right here in the United States of America and get it to them. And then, again, what they do with it, that's between them and Jesus, and there's a payday for that, good or bad. So I want to encourage you, and I want to encourage myself, and let's try to think of ways that we can be more hospitable. I'll close with this. Matt Gober's dead now, and they didn't have a lot of money in their ministry, but they knew the gift of hospitality. And I went down there to preach one time, down there at the place that he had down in South Alabama. And I went down there and preached, and they had a hospitality room. And they had fruit and cheese and crackers and water and Cokes, sodas, tea, coffee, cake, pie, and a little gift bag. I'm talking about, I knew Matt Gober, and I'm going to Canaan Land to preach. And they didn't just do it for me. They did it for the other pastors that were coming down there that week. Gave them gift bags. Wanted to pay me. I said, I ain't taking no money from you. but I will take some cheese and crackers, you know. But it just, he didn't have to do that, you see. But he had the gift of hospitality, and he wanted to make the people that came to his church and that came to Canaan land and that came to preach, he wanted to make them feel special. And I'll close with this as a testimony to Matt Gober. Had a good friend, Ross Bunch, goes to church with us. And his wife's father died, and I knew him. And he was Cajun. He wanted to be buried in Louisiana where he's from. So he was having a funeral in Louisiana. And Ross said, can you come down here and preach in Louisiana, preach his funeral in Louisiana? I said, I can't get down there and get back and keep another appointment that I had. So I called my man, Ray Harkey. Ray's on here this morning. And I said, Ray, I need some help. What do you think? Do you know anybody that has an airplane? Because I knew Ray flew. He said, let me get back with you. So he gets back with me, calls Matt Gober. Matt Gober sent his airplane and his pilot to Tuscaloosa. They picked me and Beth up in the airplane, flew us to Louisiana. We did the funeral, went to a restaurant to have lunch, long story, and that Cheryl's daddy, who's deceased, he bought lunch for everybody that came to his funeral. So those that didn't come, they didn't get the meal. And it had the restaurant reserved. So we eat in a reserved seating area restaurant till our eyes were bulging, preached the funeral, got on an airplane, flew back to Tuscaloosa, and then the plane went back to Montgomery where it's from. He didn't charge us a penny. Didn't charge us a penny. He said, if you ever need an airplane, call me. See, I got something that you can use when you're serving the Lord. And my plane's your plane. My pilot is your pilot. That's hospitality. My house is your house. My food is your food. Your ministry is mine and mine is yours. We share together. That's hospitality. And God rest. May you rest easy, Matt Gober. We'll see you sometime in the not too distant future, I'm sure. So let's be more like Gaius. Gaius who? It's the guy that took care of the people that were sharing the gospel. That's who Gaius was. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Good Lord willing, and the saints don't rise. Peace out.